Welcome, everyone. Today we are taking a deep dive into the origins of us, evolutionary emergence, and the Omega Point cosmology by Alex M. Vikoloff.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
It is. This book blends cosmology, biology, philosophy, and even some pretty mind-bending speculation.
Yeah, it's not just about how life arose, but why it matters.
Exactly. It's like Vikoloff is challenging us to see ourselves as characters in this huge cosmic narrative.
Absolutely. He really pushes you to think about humanity's role in the universe's grand scheme.
Okay, so to set the stage, Vikoloff kicks things off with a discussion about the Big Bang.
But he doesn't just settle for the standard explanation,
Right, he brings up these alternative models like eternal inflation and the big bounce.
which really gets you thinking.
It does. It's like he's saying, hey, we think this is how it all started, but what if there's a whole lot more to the story?
Exactly. Eternal inflation suggests a multiverse, a constantly expanding collection of universes.
Whoa, so not just one universe, but many.
Right. And the Big Bounce theory proposes that the universe goes through these cycles of expansion and collapse.
Meaning, our universe could have actually been born from a previous universe.
It's mind-blowing.
Okay, so maybe our universe is one of many, and perhaps not even the first one.
Oh, absolutely. The book talks about things like eternal inflation, which is this idea that our universe is just one bubble in a whole multiverse. And then there's the Big Bounce, where the universe goes through these cycles of like expanding and contracting, almost like a heartbeat, but cosmic.
Multiverse cosmic heartbeat. This is already blowing my mind.
It gets even wilder. Ever heard of the digital Big Bang? It comes from the field of digital physics.
Digital Big Bang. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Right. But it's a fascinating concept. It suggests that maybe the universe began with just one bit of information, like a tiny sieve that had everything that came after coded inside it.
So information itself could be the fundamental building block of reality. That's a whole different way of looking at things.
Exactly. And that leads us to the next part of the story, Earth. Now, you might think this is where things get simpler, but even the formation of our planet is full of surprises.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's so surprising about the formation of Earth?
Well, for one thing, there's this idea that the carbon, the stuff that makes life possible, might have come from a collision with another planet way back when the solar system was still young.
A planetary collision.
Yeah.
So you're saying a cosmic fender bender gave us the building blocks for life.
It's a pretty wild idea, and scientists think that this collision might have created the moon, too. So, in a way, we owe our existence to this massive crash billions of years ago.
Wow, we've gone from the multiverse to planetary collisions already. This deep dive is really living up to its name. But how do we go from, like, a planet full of rocks and water to actual living things?
That is the big question, and that's where abiogenesis comes in. It's the process of life emerging from non-living matter. And trust me, there are some really mind-boggling theories about how that could have happened.
Like that warm little pond idea from Darwin, where, like, the building blocks of life just kind of assemble themselves in some primordial soup.
Exactly. But the origins of us goes beyond that. It talks about RNA, which is similar to DNA, as maybe being really important for early life. It even gets into the panspermia hypothesis, which suggests that life on Earth could have come from somewhere else entirely. Maybe even Mars.
Life from Mars, that would be quite the twist.
Right. Imagine microscopic Martians hitching a ride to Earth and kicking off the whole thing. But wherever it started, the book makes it clear that the emergence of life was a huge turning point.
I can only imagine. So what was Earth like once life got going?
Well, for billions of years, the only life forms were single-celled organisms called prokaryotes. They were like the pioneers of life, setting the stage for everything that came after.
It's amazing to think that those tiny organisms were our ancestors, in a way.
It really is. And the book introduces us to this physicist, Jeremy England, who has this fascinating theory called dissipative adaptation. It basically says that lifelike structures could arise from non-living matter, like spontaneously, as a way to better use energy. Like, you know how a whirlpool forms in flowing water? Kind of like that.
So life is a way to manage energy flow. That's a pretty cool concept.
It is. And it ties into another big idea in the book, life as a computational process. The idea is that life is all about optimizing the storage and use of information. Think of it like a computer program, but like a biological one that's constantly learning and adapting.
So we're not just talking biology here, we're talking information science. That's a whole new level.
Right. And that brings us to, the molecule that's practically synonymous with life, DNA.
DNA, the instruction manual for life, right? the code that tells our cells how to build and function. But what does this book say about DNA that's, like, new?
Well, for one thing, it gets into this mysterious thing called dark DNA, which are these missing genes that might change how we understand evolution. And, get this, they've found that the genetic code actually follows rules that are similar to human language.
So our DNA is like a language that our cells can read.
That's incredible.
Like, can we learn to speak that language one day and, like, reprogram our biology?
That's a question that a lot of scientists are working on, and it could have huge implications for medicine and technology. But even beyond that, it points to a really deep connection between information, language, and life itself.
Vikolov takes us deep into our DNA.
And suggests it could be way more than just a simple blueprint.
Oh,
He proposes that DNA might actually be a sophisticated code, maybe even with a grammar similar to human language.
like a secret language hidden within us.
Right, imagine that. It means that all that junk DNA, which we thought was useless, might actually contain information we just haven't figured out how to decode yet.
What if we could crack that code? It would be like having a whole other level of understanding about ourselves.
It would be revolutionary.
Okay, so we've got this amazing language of life encoded in our DNA. But how does that actually translate into, like, the complexity of living organisms? How do individual cells, each with their own instructions, come together to form something as complicated as a human being?
That's where self-organization comes in. The book talks about how cells communicate and work together, forming complex systems like organs and tissues. Ultimately, they create a functioning whole. It's like a massive network of tiny collaborators, all working together to create the symphony of life. Trillions of cells, each behaving with a kind of intelligence and communicating with one another.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And
Right.
Vikolov even points out that, get this, we're actually more microbe than human.
Seriously.
Yeah. And this idea of collaboration goes even beyond individual organisms, right? The book mentions superorganisms.
Absolutely. Think about like a forest or an ant colony, even human societies. Those are all superorganisms where individual parts work together to create something bigger than themselves.
So from cells to societies, there's this pattern of cooperation and, like, emergent intelligence. It makes you wonder if there's some underlying principle driving this tendency toward complexity.
That's a deep question. And it's one that the book dives into as it explores the next stage of our journey, the evolution of the human mind.
The human mind, the source of consciousness, thought, emotions, is probably the most complex and mysterious thing in the universe. How does the book even approach a topic like that?
It starts by looking at the triune brain model. It describes how different parts of the human brain developed over time. It's like we have a reptile brain for basic survival, a mammal brain for emotions and social behavior, and then the human brain for like higher level thinking.
So it's like we have 3 brains in one, each one adding another layer of complexity.
Exactly. But the question is, how did we go from basic survival instincts to being able to ponder the origin of the universe? Well, one theory that the book explores is that consciousness developed as a way to deal with information overload. Think about all the input we get from our senses, our emotions, our memories. It's a lot. So maybe consciousness evolved as a way to filter and make sense of all that information.
So consciousness is like a sophisticated operating system, helping us navigate the world.
That's a great way to put it. And this leads us to another big thinker featured in the book, Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins,
Yeah.
the evolutionary biology guy, right? What does he have to say about the human mind?
Well, he talks about this idea of genes as a river out of Eden, which emphasizes how genetic information flows through time. And he also introduced the concept of memes, which are like units of cultural evolution. It suggests that ideas can spread and replicate just like genes do.
So culture, beliefs, values, they're all part of this big evolutionary dance too. Well, Vikolov has this fascinating theory about the role of cooked food.
Okay, this should be good.
He argues that cooking provided the extra energy our brains needed to grow, which then led to things like abstract thought, language, and the development of the societies we live in today.
So our ancestors basically ate their way to intelligence.
In a way, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is. But it's not just about the size of our brains. Vikolov highlights the unique structure of the human neocortex and how it's connected.
So our brains are wired differently.
Exactly. Like a finely tuned instrument capable of complex thought and creativity.
It seems like it, and The Origins of Us even mentions this controversial idea called the stoned ape theory.
Stoned ape theory. Now that's something we need to unpack carefully. What's that all about?
It's this theory, made popular by Terence McKenna, that suggests Psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms, might have actually played a role in the development of human language and culture.
Whoa. So magic mushrooms helped us become human?
Well, the book presents it as a hypothesis, not like a proven fact. But it raises some really interesting questions about the role of, altered states of consciousness in our evolution.
From the triune brain to stoned apes. We've covered a lot of ground when it comes to the evolution of the mind. But where does language fit into all of this? It seems pretty central to what makes us human.
It absolutely is. Language is the tool that lets us communicate complex ideas, share knowledge, build societies. It's the foundation of culture, technology, our ability to understand the world around us.
And the origins of us gets into that debate about whether language shapes how we see the world or just reflects it, right?
Exactly. The linguistic universals versus linguistic relativity debate. The book looks at both sides and highlights research suggesting that language can actually influence our thoughts and maybe even our perception of reality.
So the words we use, the grammar, it could all be shaping how we see the world. That's a pretty powerful thought.
It really is. And it shows just how huge of an impact language has had on our species. It's allowed us to accumulate and pass on knowledge, leading to writing, literature, and ultimately the world we live in today.
From the origins of life to the rise of civilization, this deep dive is, well, deep. But I have a feeling we're just getting started. The book hints at some even crazier ideas about our place in the universe.
Oh, you're right. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those mind-bending concepts like human-machine superminds, the possibility of living in a simulation, all that good stuff.
Ah, you've really got me curious. Can't wait to dig into those.
Me neither. But for now, let's just take a second to appreciate what we've already covered. From the Big Bang to the development of human consciousness, it's been quite the journey.
It has, and it makes you realize that our story is just one tiny chapter in this huge, ever-unfolding story of the universe.
You got it. And as we keep exploring our origins, we might even uncover some clues about where we're headed. But that's a deep dive for another time. So last time we went on this wild ride from the Big Bang to the emergence of the human mind, billions of years of history. But the origins of us doesn't stop there. It wants us to think about not just where we came from, but where we might be going.
You mentioned some pretty mind-blowing stuff before the break. Human-machine superminds, maybe even living in a simulation. That's a big jump from talking about, cells and DNA.
It is, but it's not as far out there as it sounds. These ideas actually connect back to some really interesting science and philosophy. Like, let's start with just how crazy fast human evolution has been.
I mean, we went from, hitting rocks together to launching rockets into space.
Yeah.
And technology is just accelerating, getting faster all the time.
Exactly. And that's why some people think we're on the verge of another massive evolutionary leap. The book even talks about a cybernetic future where the line between humans and machines gets even blurrier.
Cyborgs,
Yeah.
like in those sci-fi movies.
Kinda, but think about it. We're already so integrated with technology. Our phones, artificial limbs, even the internet itself is like an extension of our minds in a way.
True. I practically live on my phone these days. What about this collective intelligence thing? How does that fit into our evolution?
So the book talks about this concept called the noosphere, which was this idea from a scientist named Vladimir Vernadsky. Imagine like a sphere of human thought, containing all our knowledge and ideas and creativity. It's like the internet, but bigger, connecting our minds in ways we don't even fully grasp yet.
So like a global brain, constantly evolving and growing as we connect and share ideas.
That's the idea. Some people even think it could eventually become a true global mind, a superintelligence that's way beyond any individual human.
A global mind. That's kind of amazing, but also kind of freaky, to be honest.
It is a powerful concept, for sure. It has huge potential, but also potential risks. But it's definitely something to think about as we consider the future of our species.
Okay, from cyborgs to global minds, this is getting pretty intense. But you also mentioned that simulation hypothesis thing. How seriously should we take that idea?
Well, the idea that we're all living in a super advanced computer simulation created by some super intelligent beings has really captured people's imagination, even some scientists and philosophers. There's really no way to prove or disprove it, but it's a really interesting thought experiment, It makes you question what's real.
It really does. If everything we experience is just part of some incredibly detailed simulation, how would we even know?
Right, that's the big question. It makes you think about the limits of knowledge, and what it means for something to be real in the first place. But even if we can't answer those questions for sure, I think the book is encouraging us to to embrace the mystery and keep searching for answers.
So just to recap, we might be cyborgs living in a simulation controlled by a global mind. Anything else I need to worry about?
Well, The Origins of Us goes even deeper into the philosophical side of things with ideas like digital pantheism and the Omega Point cosmology.
Okay, I've heard those terms before, but I'm not sure I really get them. Can you break those down for me?
Sure. So, digital pantheism is this idea that the universe itself is like a self-aware system, and it's evolving towards this state of maximum consciousness called the Omega Point.
So it's like the universe is a giant computer slowly waking up.
Ha! That's a simple way to put it, but yeah, you're getting the idea. This Omega Point is like a point of ultimate complexity and consciousness, where all information and knowledge come together.
Like the singularity, but on a cosmic scale. Everything moving towards this point of, like, total understanding.
Exactly. And the book suggests that we, as part of this evolving universe, might actually be playing a part in reaching this Omega Point.
So we're not just passengers, we're actually participating in this unfolding of consciousness. Wow, that's a lot to think about.
It is. It really makes you reconsider our purpose and place in the universe, you know?
We've covered some serious ground today, from cybernetic futures to global minds to simulated realities and this Omega Point thing. It's mind-blowing stuff.
It is. And the book really pushes us to challenge the way we think, to question our assumptions, and be open to new possibilities.
That's what I love about these deep dives. It's not just about learning facts, it's about expanding our minds and seeing the world in new ways. And one of the things that keeps coming up for me is this idea that information is, like, fundamental to reality.
Yeah, that's a really important concept in The Origins of Us. Remember the digital Big Bang, where the universe starts from a single bit of information? And the idea that life itself is basically a computational process.
Right, right. Those ideas really shake things up. But how does this whole information thing connect to the big picture?
Well, the book suggests that everything we experience, the physical world, our thoughts, our feelings, it can all be understood as information. It's like the universe is this vast ocean of information, and we're swimming through it, processing and interpreting everything around us.
So instead of just matter and energy, we should be thinking about information as the building block of reality.
Exactly. And if information is fundamental, then the potential for evolution, for change, for growth is basically limitless. Maybe we're not just in the universe, but we're a part of the universe becoming, something more.
Okay, now we're getting into some deep existential stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What does it even mean to be part of the universe becoming?
Well, one idea in the book is that consciousness, or at least something like it, might be built into the universe itself. It's not just a human thing, it's a fundamental property of reality that's been evolving and growing since the Big Bang.
So we're not just random specks in a meaningless void. We're connected to something much bigger, something that's always evolving and getting more complex.
That's one way to look at it, and it suggests that maybe we have a role to play in this whole cosmic evolution thing, not just as individuals, but as a species.
So our actions, our choices, even our thoughts could be shaping the future of consciousness, like on a universal scale. That's a huge responsibility and a crazy opportunity.
It is, and The Origins of Us doesn't shy away from that. If we're truly part of this grand cosmic story, then we have a responsibility to use our knowledge and intelligence wisely.
To be stewards of consciousness, not just for ourselves, but for the universe itself.
Right. It means thinking carefully about the choices we make, the technology we develop, and the impact we have on each other and the planet.
This deep dive hasn't just given us facts about the universe. It's given us a whole new way to think about our place in it, our purpose, our responsibility.
That's what makes The Origins of Us such a powerful book. It's not just a history lesson, it's an exploration of what it means to be human in a universe that's far stranger and more interconnected than we ever imagined.
So we started with the Big Bang, went through the formation of stars and planets, saw life emerge, and traced the incredible rise of consciousness. We've even peeked into these potential futures, some pretty amazing, some a little scary. But as we wrap up this deep dive into the origins of us, I keep coming back to this question. What does it all mean?
That's the big one, isn't it? And the thing is, The Origins of Us doesn't really give you a straight answer. It kind of embraces the mystery and wants you to wrestle with these questions yourself.
I actually like that, even though part of me wants a simple answer. It feels more honest, like the book is inviting us to join the search, not pretending it has all the answers.
I agree. And I think that's a really important takeaway from all of this. The search itself is just as important as any answer we might find.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, I think so. It's the questioning, the exploring, the connecting the dots. That's what really helps us understand and appreciate the universe and our place in it.
I can get behind that. But let's be real, some of the stuff in this book is pretty wild. Simulated realities, the Omega Point, digital pantheism. It's a lot to take in.
It definitely is, but the book acknowledges that. It's not about believing everything as absolute truth. It's more about using these ideas as tools to like stretch our thinking, challenge our assumptions. They're like thought experiments that open up new possibilities.
And that's what's so cool about this deep dive. It's not just learning facts, it's learning to think differently, to see
Yeah.
things from new angles. And one thing that's really stuck with me is this idea that information is like at the core of reality. Information, not matter, is what the universe is really made of.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. It's like thinking of the universe less like a giant machine and more like a cosmic computer program.
I like that analogy. So if the universe is basically information, then what does that mean for consciousness?
Vikulov suggests that consciousness might not just be a byproduct of matter, but maybe, just maybe, it's the programmer of reality itself.
Whoa! So instead of our brains creating consciousness, it's the other way around. Consciousness creates our brains and everything else we experience.
That's a big part of what Vikulov calls digital pantheism. It's a challenge to rethink our whole place in the universe. If consciousness is fundamental, then we're not just passive observers, we're active participants in creating reality.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So if we're all part of this cosmic consciousness, shaping reality with our thoughts, does that mean we have more control over our lives than we think?
That's a question Vikulov really wants us to grapple with. He believes that our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions have a much bigger impact than we might realize.
So our minds are even more powerful than we give them credit for.
Right, and he doesn't stop there. He even dives into the nature of time itself, suggesting that maybe it's not the linear one-way street we usually think it is.
Okay, now we're really going down the rabbit hole.
I know, right? He introduces this concept of anti-time, where time flows in reverse. It's like rewinding a movie, but for the whole universe.
That's crazy, but also kind of cool. So our past, present, and future are all tangled up together somehow.
Exactly. The idea of anti-time challenges everything we think we know about cause and effect. What if our past is still influencing the present, and the choices we make now are shaping the future, but it's all happening at the same time in this multidimensional way?
That's hard to wrap my head around, but I love it.
Me too. And remember those alternative models of the universe we discussed earlier, like the Big Bounce?
Yeah.
Well, Vikulov brings those back into the conversation. He suggests that maybe the universe is cycling through these periods of expansion and contraction. Maybe the Big Bang isn't a one-time event, but more like a cosmic heartbeat, a rhythm of creation and destruction happening over and over again.
So each cycle is like a new beginning, a chance for the universe to learn and evolve.
That's the idea. Vikulov believes that with each cycle, the universe becomes more complex and more conscious, which leads us to one of his most mind-blowing ideas, the Omega Point.
And we're not just talking about the end of everything, but like maybe the very beginning, the origin.
Okay.
So think about this. What if everything we know, how we started, isn't from the Big Bang? But instead, it's like being pulled forward from some point, like way in the future, where everything is just super complex, super conscious. This is that Omega Point.
That is definitely a mind-bending shift. We're so used to thinking, in a straight line, you have a beginning, things happen, it progresses.
Right, like ABC.
Yeah, exactly. But with this Omega Point idea, it's saying, well, the universe, it might actually be shaped by something pulling it, like a magnet, a teleological attractor.
So instead of just chaos, the Big Bang, everything exploding outwards and just random chance, we're talking about purpose, a direction, a universe that's guided by this Omega Point.
Yeah, you got it. And it really challenges how we understand cause and effect, time, all of that.
Yeah.
So imagine something so advanced, so complex, that it's not even bound by time or space as we understand them.
Okay, I'm trying to get my head around this, but it's like, are we saying this Omega Point is outside of time? And it's projecting our reality backwards, like a movie playing in reverse?
That's a good way to think about it. It doesn't exist on our timeline. Instead, it's more like it's orchestrating everything, how the universe unfolds, but from this place that's beyond time as we perceive it.
Whoa, okay, that's wild.
Yeah.
So if we didn't come from just the Big Bang, does that mean, like, evolution, the whole story of life is wrong too?
Well, it definitely challenges the classic Darwinian idea.
All right.
If there's this omega point pulling everything towards a specific end, then maybe evolution isn't all random mutations and survival of the fittest.
Right.
Instead, it's guided by this pull towards more complexity, more consciousness.
So, not a brutal fight for survival, but a universe unfolding with a purpose because of this ultimate state of being.
That's the core of the omega point cosmology. It's saying that the universe isn't just random stuff happening, but a system with a direction, a purpose, driven by this omega point.
Okay, so now we're getting into how this changes where we come from, our origin story. But how does this omega point being outside of time actually work? We're talking about something beyond our grasp of time.
It definitely stretches our thinking to the limit. What the source material says is, this omega point, it might encompass all possible timelines.
Okay.
And that includes what we might call anti-timelines, like timelines going in reverse.
Wait, anti-timeline, so not just one timeline going forward to this omega point, but multiple, some going backwards.
Exactly. Picture it like this. The omega point isn't a point on a line. It's a central hub. And all these timelines, regular and reverse, they all come from it. It breaks down our linear idea of time and suggests something way more complex, way more interconnected than we can easily understand.
My brain is already melting a little bit.
Yeah.
So if this omega point is projecting all these timelines, does that mean everything we think about the past, present, future is wrong?
It challenges how we usually understand it, for sure. You see, if it exists outside of time as we know it, our linear view of time might be limited, just a way for our minds to experience this grand unfolding within the framework of time and space.
So like our brains need time to understand even if it's not the whole picture.
You could say that.
So are we saying that ideas like the past or present or future are just illusions?
Not necessarily that they're illusions, but more like facets of something bigger, something we haven't fully grasped yet. It's like, imagine you're looking at a tapestry, but from the back. You see threads, some knots, maybe a little bit of color here and there, but you don't see the whole picture. Our experience of time might be kind of like that, just a glimpse of a bigger design, all orchestrated by this omega point.
Okay, so we see the threads of time, but not the whole tapestry. But if this omega point is projecting all these timelines, even the backwards ones, what about cause and effect? Does that even make sense in this framework?
That's where it gets really interesting. Cause and effect, how we usually think about it, might be because of our linear perception of time.
Right.
But if the omega point is running everything from outside of time, then maybe cause and effect are intertwined in ways we can't even imagine right now.
So something that seems to cause something else in our timeline could be influenced by events from other timelines, even the backwards ones.
Yeah, that's a possibility. It's like ripples on a pond. They spread out, they cross each other, they affect each other. In the same way, events across multiple timelines, forward and backward, could all be connected. It creates this web of cause and effect that goes way beyond our linear understanding.
That's a wild thought. It makes you wonder if we even have free will in such a system. If the omega point is orchestrating everything, are we really choosing, or are we just acting out a script that's already written?
Ugh. That's a question philosophers have been debating forever. But this omega point cosmology doesn't necessarily mean there's no free will. Maybe free will works within the structure created by the omega point. It's like improv within a choreographed dance. You have a freedom to make choices, but it's still within the larger context of this universe guided by the omega point.
So not a set destiny, but choices within a bigger plan. But if the omega point is this point of ultimate complexity and consciousness, where did it come from? How did it begin?
Now that is a question that pushes us to the very edge of what we can understand. Remember, the omega point is outside of time as we know it, so the ideas of origin and creation, they might not even apply in the same way inside our linear way of thinking. It's like asking, what's north of the North Pole? The question itself might be based on a misunderstanding of how the whole system works.
So we're talking about something that's beyond what we can express with words or concepts. We can guess, we can theorize, but the true nature of this omega point might be completely beyond our grasp right now.
It's a vision of ultimate consciousness. He describes the omega point as a state where all information and all minds merge into a single unified entity.
So imagine all the knowledge and experience of every being throughout all of time coming together in this one cosmic consciousness. It's like something straight out of science fiction.
It might sound like science fiction, but Vikolov grounds his ideas in both scientific and philosophical reasoning. He believes the omega point is like the ultimate goal of evolution, the inevitable endpoint that the universe is moving towards.
So we're not just evolving biologically, but we're also participating in this grand cosmic evolution towards higher consciousness. That's a pretty inspiring thought.
It is. Vikolov paints a picture of a universe that's not cold and uncaring, but purposeful and meaningful. A universe that's driven by a deep desire for greater complexity and consciousness.
It's definitely a more optimistic way of looking at the future. It makes you feel like even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty of our lives, there's a grand plan unfolding, and we're all a part of it. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into The Origins of Us, Evolutionary Emergence and the Omega Point Cosmology by Alexey Vikolov. We have explored the origins of the universe, the emergence of life, and even the mind-bending idea of the Omega Point.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Ah,
But now I'm curious, what does it all mean for us, here and now?
that's a great question, and actually that's where Vikolov brings it all home.
Oh,
He doesn't just leave us with those big cosmic visions. Instead, he tries to connect them to our everyday lives
so how does he do that?
by helping us understand how these ideas can actually shape our understanding of ourselves and the choices that we make.
I like that.
Yeah, and one of the most interesting concepts he talks about is this idea of experiential nirvana.
Experiential nirvana. That sounds almost like a contradiction.
It does, right? Nirvana, a state of blissful liberation, but experienced while still being human, with all the messiness and challenges that come with it.
It is kind of a paradox.
It is. But it's also a beautiful one. It speaks to this possibility of finding deep fulfillment and meaning, even in the midst of all the imperfections and struggles that are part of being human.
So it's not about trying to escape from reality or achieve some other state of being outside of our lives.
Exactly. It's about finding that peace and interconnectedness right here, right now, in the reality we're already living in.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy to hold on to that sense of peace, especially when we're dealing with difficult things. How does Vikolov address that?
Well, he acknowledges that it's not about just wishing our problems away or pretending that suffering doesn't exist.
Right, that wouldn't be very realistic.
No, not at all. Instead, he offers a way to approach those challenges from a different perspective, to see them as opportunities for growth, as reminders of our interconnectedness with everything.
To find the meaning in them.
Exactly. And to see them as part of that big cosmic dance of creation and destruction that's happening all around us.
That's a really powerful way of looking at things.
I think so too.
So it's about accepting our experiences, all of them, the joy and the sorrow, the light and the dark.
And finding a sense of peace within that cycle of life, death, and rebirth.
It's about the whole journey.
It is. And, Vikolov even challenges us to view death, something that we often fear, as the ultimate end, as just another transition, a transformation.
Emerging back into the universal consciousness where we came from.
Right, it's all connected.
Well, this has been a truly incredible journey, exploring Alexey Vikolov's The Origins of Us, Evolutionary Emergence, and the Omega Point Cosmology.
It has been.
It's a book that really makes you think and question everything you thought you knew.
And ultimately, I think it invites us to embrace the wonder and mystery of existence itself.
I couldn't agree more.
It's a call to awaken to our own potential, to become active participants in this incredible cosmic evolution towards greater complexity and consciousness.
It is. And to everyone listening, we encourage you to dive into Vikolov's book and explore these ideas for yourself. See how they can change your understanding of the universe and your place in it. It really makes you realize that understanding where we came from is just the beginning. The real adventure is what we do with that knowledge, how we shape the future, and what we become.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the origins of us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
And remember, as we continue to uncover the mysteries of our past, we might just find the keys to unlock an even more incredible future. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Extadelic Media.